Welcome to Frontline UNSCRIPTED. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, our guest is going to share with us the wealth of possibility he recognized when he began to see the trades as an opportunity for his career path. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast Jacob Brumbelow, who is a service technician with MaxAir Mechanical. Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. It was great talking to you a couple weeks ago, and I'm excited. So thank you.
Yes, of course. We're going to talk about a number of things today, but the first thing I want to talk about is your journey to field service. Tell the tale of how you ended up in the role you're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started a while back. Um, as soon as I finished high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a job at a grocery store, and I just knew that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So my mom went to college. My older brother went to college, and it kind of felt like that was the option. That was the way to, I guess, stall more time until I find out what I want to do. It was like a nice little break from deciding jumping into something.
Hmm.
So I decided to go to college for computer science, which is what my brother went for. And ultimately, it was very boring. It wasn't really for me. I got a bunch of different jobs after that. I worked at a auto shop while I was going to college, and I realized that I like fixing stuff and I like
Hmm.
working with my hands. It was way more, I guess, I got more satisfaction from that than working on a computer.
Hmm.
And so then I still try to stick with college and finish it through, but eventually I realized that this is really not what I'm supposed to do. So I actually have an uncle who is in the HVAC industry, and he actually mentioned way before I even started college that he could always get me in the HVAC industry. But of course, back then, I told him no. I think it has like a bad rep going to the
Hmm.
trades over college. I think it's people see it as like you can make it to college, so you're going to the trades, and that's how I viewed it, which of course is super far from the truth.
Hmm.
But eventually, I ended up hitting him or messaging him and seeing if I could get into the industry. And he
Hmm.
was super helpful and helped me eventually drop out of college and get into the HVAC industry. And since then, it's haven't looked back.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. And remind me, I know we talked about this, but I actually don't remember. How long have you been doing your current role?
So I'm coming up just on 2 years
Okay.
in July.
And it is, when do you transition? I have this in my notes, but I don't have them in front of me. Remember, we were talking about how I connected with yourself and with Phil, who was the first guest on this podcast at a similar time, and we were talking about how the time frames of like apprentice to technician to master technician and beyond were different based on the different spaces you're in. So what is kind of the time frame from apprenticeship to technician and from there?
Yeah, so we have a apprenticeship school through the local union 72 United Association, and it's a 5 year program that
Okay.
you start out. As soon as you start, you go into the school as the first year, and then at the very end, after you complete fifth year, you become a journeyman. And then after that, of course, you can move up to like area team lead, a foreman, any of that. But it's really just 1 to 5. You're an apprentice, and then you
Okay.
go to journeyman.
Okay. So I want to go back to a couple things that you said. One is I kind of chuckled to myself when you're like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I don't know. I feel like how many people really do ever? Really,
Yeah,
like you kind of ultimately, some people do, and that's great. I think a lot of people find themselves in something that hopefully they do enjoy, but maybe wouldn't have seen themselves in when they were a kid envisioning, what their career might be. I think it is easier. Like you mentioned, like you said, I knew what I didn't want to do more so than I knew what I wanted to do. And so what I'm curious about is you kind of assumed based on your parents' trajectory, your brother's trajectory, like college was just an assumption that everyone made. Um, I'm curious, you said once you got there, like you really realized this is not, I'm not enjoying this. This is not what I want to do. Do you think you had an inkling of that beforehand and maybe ignored it? Or do you think you just really didn't realize until you were in the classes and doing the things you thought you would enjoy that you actually didn't?
Yeah, so I think really it is just trial and error, unfortunately. I didn't know until I tried it, and I didn't know I liked to work with my hands until I went to that auto shop and actually
Mm-hmm.
worked with my hands. So it was really just like a gut feeling. It wasn't, I didn't have anyone like a voice inside my head telling me like you need to go to the HVAC industry, you need to do this. It was just what felt best to me. What did I get
Mm-hmm.
the most satisfaction from, I guess? What did I
Yeah.
feel like had the biggest ceiling or something that I can move up in and keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Like more possibilities, I guess.
Yeah. And you kind of spoke about the perception that I think is really valid to discuss, which is that this path of going into the trades instead of going into computer science or whatever else you decide to was somehow less than. And I think you know that perception, it's important to be aware of that and think about the ways that that is being even inadvertently reinforced to kids, because I think what happens then is you kind of close a mental door to things other than this one sort of expected or anticipated path. And maybe if we did a better job societally of not creating or reiterating those perceptions, then you might have had experiences early on where you allowed yourself to realize sooner that you would ultimately really like that career. um, the other thing we spoke about that I think is interesting is that there was this, you had this expectation that you would go to college and you tried it, right? And ultimately decided this is not what I want to do. And I had asked if your parents were supportive of that choice. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamic of that?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I originally wanted to go to college and went to college, my parents were, of course, very supportive, but they've always been supportive of any decision I make as long as I'm moving forward, as long as I'm not
Hmm.
staying still, stagnant, and not, I guess, growing. So when I told them that I wanted to make the switch, they were more than happy to support me. And they viewed it as a great alternative, a great
Yeah.
opportunity, and not, they didn't have the same mindset that I did, where it was like college is the only way. College
Hmm.
is where you want to go if you don't want to, you know, like collect pennies and and barely
Hmm.
get by, which is
Yeah.
what I always assumed, which is not the truth.
And that's why I wanted to clarify, because I think, your perception, um, that was obviously influenced by other things. That wasn't put there by your parents, right? Like there are certainly young people where it isn't just the parents are supportive of whatever choice as long as it's a good and healthy choice. There is situations where people feel pressure or there are certain expectations. And I just wanted to clarify that wasn't your experience, yet you still had these perceptions of HVAC or of the trades as, sort of a lesser potential option than, the more traditional go to college, do this, do that type thing. So I just think, again, I certainly could not propose the solution to that. But I do think it's one benefit of having these conversations and for you, yourself to think about how, having had that experience, you can share that with the younger generations, because there is a ton of possibility, and it some of those different stereotypes are just not valid, and you kind of know that now. So you mentioned when we spoke that when you began your apprenticeship, it just clicked and you absolutely loved it. So you felt like it was like night and day from how you felt going to college and sitting in your computer science classes. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of like it clicking and being excited about what you had the opportunity to do?
Absolutely. I think a big part of that too is being in the HVAC industry and a service technician is that every day is something different.
Mm-hmm.
Every day is a different experience, a different challenge to overcome. And it never gets boring. It's something that is constantly changing. And of course, the industry is constantly growing and changing, and you have to constantly adapt. And that really I mean, of course, the computer science industry is changing as well, but I guess being in the field and actually in person, working with my hands and doing stuff that I can see the immediate impact of from
Mm-hmm.
customers or clients, the satisfaction from them just feels worth it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it makes it worth it. Like being on the hot roof and sweating all day for 8, 10 hours, doing stuff
Yeah.
that no one else wants to do, and then also having that skill that other people don't know how to do. It's very feels valuable and something that I wouldn't be able to get in the computer science field or
Mm.
in going through college.
Yeah.
So it's been great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, beyond obviously having, rightfully having a goal of finding a career where you like what you're doing, and you feel some personal satisfaction from your day-to-day work, what are your other sort of, objectives with your career? Like, what is important to you in terms of not just, okay, do I like what I'm doing when I show up to work every day? But if you look sort of longer term or bigger picture, like what type of employee experience are you, is important to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So growth is definitely like my number one. If there's a ceiling, like that the job that I worked before at the auto shop, it felt like there was such a short ceiling that I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
pass that. When I joined this industry, it feels like there's so many different opportunities for growth to develop myself to be the best me that I could be, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I really value and which helps me push forward. I guess it's kind of helps it's like my vision of being the best service tech I can be. It pulls me forward of just growth, personal
Mm-hmm.
growth. That is something I value. Of course, the company too, how they treat their employees, how they value them. I feel like the company that I'm at does a great job at that, of making you
Mm-hmm.
feel seen, listening to your thoughts, your opinions, including you. But really, growth is huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you think of any examples that you could share of? I love the point you made about, that your company does a really good job of listening, of making you feel that your opinions matter, of making you feel involved. Do you have any examples that you could share of like what that looks like for you in your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a big thing too is we have like I guess team meetings every so
Hmm.
often, and it's really encouraged for everyone to speak up and give their insight and opinion. And that's something that it's small, but it goes a long way. It
Hmm.
it improves the whole team morale, and it makes you not feel just like a number. It makes you
Hmm.
feel like what you're doing matters, and that's really a great sense of satisfaction. Purpose. So that's a big part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I asked that question because this is something that comes up in a lot of our unscripted conversations, is that it can be really tough in a field service environment where many of the employees are, in the field, they're remote, they're so in different situations. Sometimes they're not coming into an office regularly at all. They may not even live near one. They might not interact with their teammates face to face. much at all. And so there can be this sense of isolation or disconnectedness. And that's why I was asking for those examples. And you said it's something pretty small. I think it's, a lot of times leadership is looking for big things to do so much that they miss looking at whether they're doing those little things that often make the biggest difference. Like, are we just giving everyone a chance to speak their mind or ask questions or share their ideas? And are we actually listening to them? It's not big in terms of like innovative or flashy, but it's big in terms of the impact it has on how people feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, as you've kind of settled into your role and you interact with a number of technicians that are a lot older than you are, what differences, if any, have you noticed about what you value and what you're looking for and what drives you versus what does those same things for them?
Yeah, so without bashing any of the older technicians, I love them, but I think they don't focus as much on like the growth opportunities and like being a leader and leadership opportunities
Hmm.
to really move up in their role. I feel like the big difference is the younger generations or my generation is real focused on what can we do now that will help impact us in the future. And I think they're more focused on doing a great job, doing their job the best they can do until they retire,
Hmm.
and they're not really looking for the next best thing or how to move up or how to be a leader, how to grow in that field. They're just looking at how they can be the best technician they can be, which is great. But I guess it's just a whole different mindset, a whole
Yeah.
different outlook to it.
Yeah. It definitely is. And you can see how, when you think about it from a leadership perspective or from a company perspective, there's some aspects of that mentality that are just far easier to manage, right? Like if you kind of give these folks a good paycheck and respect and equip them to do their job, that leave them alone and let them do it and they'll stick around for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of like formulaic in a way that from a leadership perspective it's easy to understand, it's easy to deliver, and there's a consistency or a security in knowing that they're not looking to always be moving to the next thing, to the next thing. So you know again, we have conversations on the podcast a lot about, yeah, I mean, you can see how it's easier. It just is not the reality for folks like yourself and even younger. It's just not how people are built now. And companies really have to adapt to, figure out how do you keep younger talent that is growth minded engaged without fueling this expectation that in the blink of an eye you can be the CEO of the company. I mean, sometimes I think from a
Right.
leadership perspective, like that pursuit of constant growth feels like unrealistic expectations, but I think the responsibility is on the business to figure out what are those steps or what is that trajectory that gives people the sense of accomplishment and growth that's reasonable also to fit the business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a big part of it too is when we look at older generations and older technicians that are great and fantastic at their job, they know a lot. We see that a lot of them, their knees are hurting all day, their back are hurting all day, and it's not very desirable.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to chase after that. I feel like I constantly want to do something different where I'm not in that stage when I'm 50, 60 years
Right.
old. I
Right.
want to be somewhere that's less, I guess, tough on my body. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be the best I can be in the field, but maybe not in the same position.
Yeah.
I want to constantly move up.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you mentioned that since you made this transition and you let go of the computer science path and became an apprentice, you have been in awe of the amount of possibilities. Like you immediately liked what you're doing, and so it kind of clicked for you. But you shared that you also sort of had this perception that it would kind of maybe be like this grind or this thing, and you've been really surprised by you know the opportunities that are in front of you as you kind of get into the field. um, can you talk a little bit about, I know one of the biggest examples of that for you is a leadership program that you are currently taking part in. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a leadership, it's like a leadership academy at our company that they do. This is going to be the third cohort, I guess, of it since I started. And it's a 12 session, 12-week program that is designed for everyone, people in the field, in the office, everything in between, from service technicians to general managers, branch managers, service managers, accountants, really anything. It's designed to help them grow in all aspects of being a leader in their personal life, in their work life. And it's been super great for me because I think a lot of times I'm real big on focusing on my weaknesses and how to improve those. Through this academy, we go a lot about weaknesses, but it's also about how to build our strengths,
Hmm.
the strengths that we do have, and build those up to be the best leader that we can be. So it's a great academy. I was super happy I got a part of it. They have a big like interview process for it.
Okay.
You have to submit like an essay and then go through a interview and get selected because they only select like 12 people because it's like a small group, and they
Hmm.
divide that into three groups where you work with other people in the company. And it's a great way to build relationships with other people that you wouldn't normally have,
Hmm.
working in the field. Like I'm working with accountants and estimators that I've never met before, I never
Hmm.
would have if I never took a part in it. So it's a great opportunity, and it was something that I'm very grateful for that the company does.
Yeah, yeah. Did you decide to apply on your own, or were you like suggested to do it, or how did that work?
So I did it on my own. I originally wanted to do it 2 years ago when I first started because that's when it came out, but I was really, really nervous to do it.
Hmm.
I'm a big introvert, and that was the whole academy is built on public speaking, which I am absolutely terrible at. And
No.
uh, and and eventually, now it started in January. Realized that the only way to get better at public speaking is to practice public speaking.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of like a driving force for me to build confidence in public speaking and also build relationships with other people that I wouldn't normally have, as well as grow in my personal life,
Hmm.
to be a better leader, to be a better person, really.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. So I do a lot of public speaking. I mean, not just like this, but like also at events and on stages and, stuff like that. And at this point, I often get really nice feedback after, like, you were so genuine and so natural, and you're so good at, doing that. And actually, funny story, I think it was about 2 years ago, I was giving a keynote presentation at a conference. And so they introduced me and I got up on stage and they didn't have my slides. So I had 20 minutes and I just had to like freestyle a whole presentation from memory because I waited to see like, could they just not find them and were they going to pop up in like 20 or 30 seconds? And then it was like, nope, you don't have them? Okay, great, And afterwards, everyone was like, how did you handle that? Blah, blah, blah. But I think back to like the really early days that none of these people saw. And I was absolutely horrible. I was terrified. I was so bad at it at first, like mostly because I let my nerves get the best of me and I was trying to be something I'm not. Like I wasn't focused on being myself. I was trying to show up as what I thought everyone wanted me to be instead of just being me. Um, so it's not that you're not good at it. You're going to be great at it. It just really does. It's one of those things that just really does take practice. I think it's the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. And, the more things go wrong and you realize like the world doesn't fall apart just because messed up on
Right.
stage or whatever, and then you just kind of over time, you're like, okay, this is fine. I'm used to it. Um, but I love that they have this program, and I think one of the things that I really like about what you've shared is that in the way you described it, it seems like they're defining anyone as a leader. Like you don't actually have to be in a role where you have a team or you're currently, leading within the organization. And I like that because I think it's true, to some extent, whether it's in our personal lives and how we show up for people there, or even, the ways that you can lead professionally even before you get to a point in your career that you have people reporting to you. There's such great skills to be working on. And I like that the company sees the value in putting people in that program even if they aren't yet in a position where they're responsible for managing people. What do you feel like you've learned about yourself within the program so far?
Well, for one, that I am bad at public speaking. That was number one. That was the first day we had to do like a presentation in front of a lot of the executives, and yeah, that was a nightmare. But since then, I've learned that I am capable of changing and growing in that field, and it's actually been way easier the more I've done it, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, been way better at it, thankfully. Um, but a big part of that I'm learning about myself through the program is that anyone can be a leader. Like you were saying, it's not defined by a role in leadership. That was a big thing that we actually went over in it, was
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't have the leadership qualities and I guess traits needed to be a good leader before you get into that leadership role, it's doomed from the start. Like you won't be able to develop them as easy if you don't be proactive about it and do it
Mm-hmm.
before. So it's been great. It's taught me a lot about areas I need to improve and areas that I'm really good at that I need to keep building on. It's been good.
Yeah. You said that before taking part in this program, you really didn't think that, or you at least hadn't thought about or didn't necessarily envision yourself in a leadership role, and that it's kind of opened your eyes to that possibility as well. How has it changed your perspective?
Yeah, so I think before I always viewed leadership as kind of someone that's directing orders, telling
Hmm.
people what to do. But through the program, it's about to end now. We have about 2 weeks left in it. I've come to realize that to be a leader is to serve. Servant
Hmm.
leadership is way more important than a leader that's just directing orders. And yeah, uh, to I lost my train of thought.
That's
Could you
okay.
ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just have to think about what the question was as well. Um, so you had said that before taking part in this program, you hadn't really thought about or seen yourself in a leadership role. How has being a part of this program changed your perspective?
Yeah, so it changed my whole idea, I guess, of being a leader. Now I view it as more not someone that directs orders, but someone that sets an example, I guess, for others, for them um, to have the influence that other people will be naturally drawn to follow your example of being the best, of being, the best in your respective field, of just being a motivator, really, someone
Hmm.
that encourages others, not directs others. So that's been huge change in my perspective on being a leader.
Yeah. So it is something you can see yourself doing now, and maybe even 10, 12 weeks ago, you hadn't maybe thought that far or didn't think that way.
Yeah, absolutely. 10, 12 weeks ago, I never even thought of myself being a leader. I just really wanted to get into the program to build confidence and public speaking. But now I'm realizing that leadership is for everyone.
Hmm.
Anyone and everyone can be a leader and is really needed uh, to better the organization for everyone to
Hmm.
be a leader, to be a servant leader. So it really, hopefully in the future, I'll be able to be, I'll have the, I'll have a role in leadership and a
Right.
title. But right now, it's all about setting an example and being the best I can be. So I can encourage others and motivate others and inspire and influence people to do the same.
Yeah. And honestly, focusing on that is what will get you there, when the time comes,
Right.
right? It's doing those things now, not waiting until someone assigns you a title or, offers you a different opportunity. You're going to increase your likelihood of achieving those things by exactly what you're saying, like embracing that mentality right now and putting those practices that you're learning in the program into action. So that's really cool. So, thinking about this possibility of, you know, you went down this path of going to college, you realized it wasn't for you, and then this whole other world of possibility was opened up when you realized that, maybe connecting with your uncle and getting into HVAC could be a path. And you tried it, you liked it immediately, and here you are. Um, this idea that you've landed in a career path you didn't assume you would have growing up, and you now are sort of reimagining not only your career path, but also becoming a leader. And, all of these different opportunities are, lighting up for you that you just really had never thought about. I'm curious if you had an opportunity to talk with someone in middle school or high school about, the way that your eyes have been open to the breadth of possibilities or options that do exist, what would you share with them?
I mean, the biggest thing I can think of is try new things. Don't just automatically assume this is what you're going to do because this is what other people did. You have to go out there and try out different jobs, different pathways to really know what you're going to do. Don't settle for whatever you think is the right path, which is
Mm-hmm.
what I did because ultimately it never works out. And you'll realize hopefully sooner than later that it isn't the right path and you can change. But yeah, I guess to people that are younger, high school, middle school, just get out there and try different things. See what you love to do. Find what gives you the most satisfaction and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to be in the future? Like what is your vision? If it's, being a leader, if it's having a lot of growth opportunities and, chase that. Don't just chase the title or the job that you think you should get.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big thing for my high school, which I wish they did, was have like a job fair or something that showed the trades, at the school. We never had
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, we had a carpenter class, like a carpentry class, but I didn't really want to be a carpenter. If I had that, I think it would have been a lot easier. Um, but if your school doesn't have that, you have to get out there and just try it. Don't automatically assume what you should do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this real thing of, the benefit of visibility and exposure and, just how do we help kids to see that there's more options than just these, when you're little, I think it's so common that someone says, "What do you want to be?" And it's like teacher, doctor, like there's like three or five things that kids are kind of programmed to say. um, the thing that's so cool, but also so challenging with field service is that there's, all of this opportunity across a lot of different industries that quite literally keep our world running, but it's like you don't know them all by name. Or if you do, like in your instance, maybe you have a perception about what that career means or would look like. And I think the more we can kind of break down some of those stereotypes and have better representation of a bunch of different career paths, that would be good. So, I'm curious, last question is, changing the question about like what would you say to someone who is kind of young and considering careers. Now I'm going to say, what would you say to someone in senior leadership that you think maybe they tend to get wrong, a misconception or, a generalization about young talent that you would caution them to reconsider?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think there's a couple things. One of them is that we're not, I guess, really loyal to our organization. I think a lot of times people are like, they're just going to quit, doesn't even matter, don't even try training them. But in reality, I believe that younger generation or us, we are loyal just to different aspects. Like we're loyal to values, to our team, to growth opportunities, not necessarily to that company or that organization, but we have loyalty to, I guess, growing. So we are loyal, just not in the same aspects that I guess previous generations were loyal to, which is their
Mm-hmm.
company. And then another big thing I believe is don't want to work hard. I'm sure you've heard that before. That a lot of guys are like, they don't like to work hard. I think it's a big difference on how the uh, older generation, I guess, views working hard. I think theirs is more like longer hours, breaking a sweat, putting some elbow grease in it, which is of course working hard, but I think a lot of the younger generation is more focused on what's the biggest impact I can have.
Mm-hmm.
What's how can I be as efficient as possible? What's a better way to do this? Which
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't focus on, and that we do, and it kind of gets viewed as maybe they're lazy, they're not hard workers, but in reality, we are. We just are constantly, I guess, innovative and want to look for the next best thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, it would be really good for leaders to be listening, right? And open to what are those different ways, because there's a ton of good ideas that can come from folks like yourself that are doing the job every day. I also like the point about loyalty because I think, you know, one of the things that has come up is just that money alone is not enough to keep younger talent loyal, right? It's there has to be something else, and I had someone a while back say, I'm so tired of this. Uh, I'm so frustrated because we keep bringing in new technicians and then 6 months later they leave to go somewhere else for 50 cents more an hour. And I'm like, well, and I hate to break it to you, but they're not leaving over 50 cents.
Right.
Like, there's something else you're not offering, right? And so I think it's really easy, to your point, to point fingers at the talent instead of reflecting back on what's the experience we're actually providing to people. You said earlier on how you feel like your company does a good job of making you feel like you matter and that you have a voice and things like that. They're not going to offset not paying people well or fairly, right? But
Yeah.
when the pay part is equal, they make a tremendous difference in terms of the type of environment someone wants to stay a part of versus, going somewhere where it is just here, do this, stay quiet,
Right.
because those leaders maybe are used to the older talent that was fine doing that, and the
hmm
game has changed. So, yeah. Really good. Jacob, any other thoughts or comments?
Uh, none for me. I just want to stress the point. If you are a younger listener, get out there, try other things. Don't think what you want to do is what you're going to do forever.
Mm-hmm.
You have to try other new things and things that you maybe never even thought you would be interested in. Just see if you like it because that's the only way you're going to find what makes you happy.
Yeah. I think, that's a good point too. Like it's never too late for a pivot either, right? If you're
Oh yeah.
if you're not younger and you all of a sudden are kind of, finding that the path you went down by default is really not what you want for yourself, like It's not, maybe it's not locked in place. Maybe there's room to, reimagine or reconsider. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we want people to be like you who, like you said, it clicked. You like what you're doing, you feel good about it, you feel like there's a lot of potential, and that's a really good thing. So I'm excited for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yes, absolutely. You can find more by visiting the home of Frontline Unscripted at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.